Okay, picture this. It's the dawn of the 20th century. And Britain is, well, an empire. It's a society that feels like it's built on solid rock. Tradition, order, authority, things that seem like they'll last forever. But in just 50 years, that entire world gets flipped on its head. So today, we're going to explore that incredible transformation, a journey from absolute certainty into a whole new age of questioning.
You know, this quote from George Bernard Shaw just hits the nail on the head. It perfectly captures that feeling. For so many people, the very ground they stood on, their beliefs about God, about society, about family, even about art, it just crumbled. So let's dig into how that rock, that seemingly eternal Victorian world, started to fall apart. So what exactly was this rock everyone was standing on? Well, it was the Victorian worldview. It was a mindset that saw its core institutions as not just strong, but as final, permanent, beyond question, a real fortress of the mind. And this right here shows you just what a seismic shift we're talking about. The Victorians were really defined by an attitude of acceptance. They affirmed authority, but the 20th century? It was all about interrogation and revolt. It was this fundamental change from just taking things at face value to demanding to look under the hood. For the Victorians, these four pillars, home, constitution, empire, and religion, were the absolute bedrock of civilization. And it wasn't just that they thought these things were good, they saw them as the finished product, the final form. The idea that they could be fundamentally changed or even replaced was almost unthinkable. But of course, no fortress is ever truly untouchable, right? The attacks didn't come from the outside. They came from a new generation of thinkers and writers who started to question everything from within. The great interrogation was on. And leading the charge, George Bernard Shaw. This guy wasn't just a playwright, he was a full-blown intellectual provocateur. His whole mission, really, was to force people to stop passively accepting what they were told and to start personally examining every single belief they held. And his personal creed was this simple but totally revolutionary three-step process. Don't just believe, question. Don't just accept, examine. Don't just inherit some old idea, test it. This was a direct assault on that Victorian habit of just nodding along. Shaw just put his finger on this massive hypocrisy. Society was racing ahead with technology, right? Eagerly scrapping old machines for new ones, but when it came to its moral and social software, it was still running on ancient, totally outdated programming. Shaw saw it, and he called it out with blistering clarity. Now, this new spirit of questioning didn't just change society, it absolutely shattered the world of literature. A huge divide opened up, splitting writers into two totally distinct camps, and really changing the relationship between art and the public forever. So you basically had two big camps emerge. On one side, you had the Fabians, people like Shaw and H.G. Wells. For them, art was a tool. It was meant to change society, art for life's sake. But on the other side, you had the Bloomsbury group, with figures like Virginia Woolf. They championed art for art's sake, focusing on the individual, on consciousness, on beauty, and not really on social crusades. And you can actually put a date on that fracture, 1922, the year Joyce's Ulysses and Eliot's The Waste Land were published. This is the moment literature takes a really sharp turn. It leaves what our source calls the high road of communication and just retreats into this esoteric fastness, a place only a select few intellectuals could really access. So what was the result of all this? Well, you get this new kind of art that was often intentionally difficult, almost hostile to the average intelligent reader. In some circles, literature stopped being something that enriched public life and instead became like raw material for academic analysis, a kind of cerebral incest, as the author puts it. So, while all this high art was retreating into its ivory tower, the world outside was being completely remade, especially after World War II. The old certainties were gone, and something new and very, very different was taking their place. After the war, Britain builds the welfare state. I mean, it was this grand project. The idea was to wipe out poverty and give everyone security from cradle to grave. And the assumption was, if you get rid of economic stress, you'll get a happy, content society. But it just wasn't that simple. You see, what emerged was this profound paradox. Instead of some kind of utopia, a sullen discontent started to take hold. Once people's basic needs were met, these deeper questions about purpose and meaning bubbled to the surface, and a lot of people didn't like the answers they found. Crime, which everyone thought was caused by poverty, actually went up, and you got this new rootless generation. They were educated, sure, but totally disconnected from their own culture and history. It was a pretty stark lesson. Material comfort does not automatically equal happiness.
This whole situation led to the rise of a new figure, the mass man. The common man of earlier literature, that unique individual with their own quirks, was being replaced by this more homogenized figure. Someone whose tastes, desires, and even their identity were being shaped by the huge forces of mass production and, crucially, advertising. So you have this new world of mass consumerism and this undercurrent of discontent, and that creates the perfect storm for a new kind of rebellion. A rebellion of youth who basically rejected the whole system.
But what kind of revolt was it, really? Was it some noble struggle for a new set of values? Or was it what the source calls a cult of immaturity? A rebellion for rebellion's sake, fueled by a society that suddenly gave teenagers a ton of spending power?
The most visible symbol of all this was the beatnik. It was an idea imported from America, and they professed this total disgust with society and tried to contract out of it completely. Their whole look, the jeans, the baggy sweaters, the transient lifestyle, it was a deliberate public performance of contempt for all the traditional values. And this contempt for authority wasn't just confined to the beatniks. No, it seeped into the broader culture. It led to a new kind of satire that was all about easy, witless ridicule. It wasn't the sharp, analytical satire of someone like Shaw. This was about tearing things down just for a laugh, without really understanding them first. Which brings us to our final question. The Victorians, for all their faults, had what you might call a commendable reticence, a kind of modesty. The 20th century tore all those walls down, embracing a public exhibitionism in life and art. The rock of certainty crumbled, and in its place came a world of questions. So, what was the trade-off? What was ultimately gained, and what exactly was lost in the rubble?